I'm here reading my book. We're going to be on chapter 7. As you know, this is from The Phoenix and the Falcon. It's my historical fiction novel set in the time of Attila the Hun. I've taken certain liberties with Attila the Hun. The main thing is about a story about a woman who's in crisis and how she deals with the hardship of her life. But it's not all bad, even though she's suffered a terrible, terrible loss of her son, unbelievable loss of her son and her grandfather and her whole life. She has found the possibility of a new life, not the one she really wants, but she's been rescued by Valamir, who's an Ostrogoth. Ostrogoths were allies of Huns who had been subjugated 50 years previous. So even though he's an ally, he's not necessarily, they're subordinate to the Huns. And I placed the book not in any place we knew. I took certain liberties because we don't really know that much about what Attila was doing when he was young. But so they're on the steppes of what will become Russia, because Helena was en route to Persia with her grandfather, who was a Persian. We call it not Iranian, but Persian, and he was a follower of the old religion of Persia, which is Zoroastrianism. That was the first religion, a very old religion, one that you can only be born into. You can't be converted. So it's known in the Middle East, but not so much known here. And because I was in music and religion major when I was in college, double major, so I'm always interested in different things like that. So in the book, you'll see as it goes along, there's a fair amount of mysticism, but that's coming. So anyway, we are on chapter 7, and it's about a 10-page chapter. So if you're not caught up, this is on YouTube and also on Facebook, and you can always subscribe to my YouTube channel, which apparently helps. If I have 100, it helps somehow to get a better URL. I don't know exactly how that works, but it's a good goal. All right, chapter 7. The roan galloped hard across the steppes, effortlessly carrying Valamir and Helena. Fastiel danced with the wind, straining against the reins tied to Valamir's saddle. As the white stallion lunged forward, he held his tail high, and it streamed behind him. The clouds billowed in the blue sky. The horse's hoofs beat the ground. As they approached the funeral pyre, the wind had blown away much ash, revealing Mikhail's bones. For a moment, Helena looked away. Then she stared at the remnants of the blaze. She sought comfort in her religion. Desperately, she needed to believe that the earth would cleanse Mikhail's body and his spirit would fly free to the light of the one God. Yet Zarathustra's teachings had become mere words. Valamir reined in his horse, halting him before the mound. Fastiel snorted at the smell of charred death, scorched by flames. The roan was unperturbed. Dismounting first, Valamir lifted Helena down, leaving a rein dangling on the ground, a signal for the stallion to stay. Both horses grazed quite peaceably for two stallions in such close proximity. Taking her hand, Valamir led Helena to the pyre, but stepped back and gave her the illusion of solitude. She bowed her head. After a moment, she looked up, her sight blurred from tears, and saw Mikhail and her grandfather. From the far side of the pyre, they faced her. She grasped, but did not blink, afraid to lose the vision. Her grandfather appeared no more than 30, much younger than she remembered him, even as a small child. With radiance, he smiled at her. The love in his face was echoed by the warmth in Mikhail's eyes. Yet her child's expression was shadowed by sorrow, and she understood that he had not been ready for death. Her throat tightened with tears. Golden light surrounded them, unlocking the chill within her heart. Though their lips were motionless, their voices spoke to her, softly murmuring, encouraging her to walk in the light of God. Her reaction was bitter. She felt abandoned, even betrayed. How dare they be at peace when she felt so wretched, so alone without them? She wanted to pour out her feelings, to share her agony, but could not. They began to fade. She panicked, desperate to keep the connection, if only for another moment. She entreated silently, "Please, don't go, not yet." Responding, the figures solidified, dissipating the miasma gathering around them. "You must accept what is, Helena," her grandfather said clearly, but within her mind. She disagreed. "It's too much," she said to them in thought. Her grandfather's answer was swift. "Your heart will show you the way, Helena. Listen to it." Through a film of tears, she watched Mikhail as he transformed, maturing into an older childhood than adolescence, until finally he stood before her as a man. She heard his deepened voice. "Mother, I want you to be happy. There's no death, only God. I am with him." Even as her heart opened to him, she wondered if madness stalked her. "It's too hard, Mikhail. We're with you, always. We'll wait for you until you are called, but not by your hand. You can't come into the light, carrying the stains of your own blood," Mikhail said with the maturity of a man. Her grandfather's voice seemed farther away. "Find the strength, Helena. It is within you." Now close in age, her son and grandfather linked arms. The light around them shifted, becoming brighter, more intense. She blinked her eyes, feeling oddly at peace, and they were gone. Only the wind, the steps, and the ashes remained. Deep in thought, she stared into the pyre one last time and turned away. Valamir waited, leaning against his horse. All at once, she was lightheaded, unable to move forward. As he led the horses to her, Valamir's eyes reflected the blue sky. His face was somber. "It's time to go." He put his arms around her and lifted her onto his horse. With her body against his, they rode back to camp. No words broke the silence. They reached his tent, situated near the northern perimeter. The camp remained quiet, all but empty of men. Glad to be spared the sight of returning Huns, Helena was thankful. In the afternoon sunlight, Krachapan prepared their meal. He looked at Helena with concern and then frowned at Valamir. "Have you seen Bevian?" Valamir asked. "No, not yet." He turned the meat cooking on a spit across the fire. "You've exhausted her. She's not well." The old man chided him. She had a serious blow to the head by the look of her. His penetrating eyes assessed her. "I wonder if you should have given her my mixture for pain yesterday." Valamir dismounted, holding her in his arms, and glared at the servant with exasperation. Remembering how Kansbar treated people under his control, she became afraid for Krachapan. Yet Valamir only shrugged at his servant's insubordination. At the next instant, she realized why the wine Valamir had given her had been so bitter. Momentarily annoyed by the deception, she accepted that his intentions had been good. She had slept soundly and well despite her injuries. Without a word, the Goth took her inside the tent, placing her on the ground. "Rest. I must care for the horses. Tomorrow we break camp. You'll need your strength." With her hand, she covered an inadvertent yawn. As he smiled, his eyes were warm. "Make sure you eat what Krachapan offers. He can be fierce. You aren't angry with him?" "No, he's never shy with his opinions, but he's family. Try to sleep. I'll be back later." Deep in thought, she stared at the fire. When Krachapan entered carrying 2 bowls of food, she welcomed the interruption. The meat smelled savory, making her stomach growl. Placing a dish in her lap, he sat across from her. "Eat. I made this specially for you." He spoke Persian, rusty from disuse. His dialect was the language of her cradle, graceful in its cadences and soothing to her soul. "May I see your hand?" he asked. Her eyes did not leave his face, but she nodded. With gentle expertise, he examined the wrappings. "Valamir did well by you. In time you'll never know that any bones were broken." "I'll never forget." She paused. What did he give me to sleep? "It's a concoction that I used for injuries. Are you angry with us?" She shook her head and looked downward. You have more than one kind of pain, Helena. How may I help you with your loss?" Her eyes blinked with tears. The sympathy twisted in her heart. She stared at him, searching for hypocrisy, but saw only compassion. "Valamir wants to wed me. I don't know what to do." She studied the flickering fire. "Why does he ask you this?" "Attila. He wants me to keep me safe from him. Attila. Karatapan repeated in a flat voice, his expression bleak. Take Valamir's protection, Helena. He'll not hurt you. How did you come to be with him? Karatapan's smile was touched with bitterness. I had the misfortune of traveling with a small caravan that was attacked by King Roglipa's men. Having no one to ransom me, I remained these 25 years. That must have been awful for you, her mouth twisted with visceral knowledge. The first months were hard. I tried to escape. They tracked me down the second day, but did not kill me. So they forced my face in the dirt and cut my right calf muscle, making me a cripple, cheating me of death. Years later, my situation improved. Vandalarius, Valamir's father, bought me to nursemaid his sons. They lost their mother and needed someone to watch over them. But why? You, a man. Vladimir at 6 needed supervision. Valamir just past 12 was ready for a tutor. I had knowledge of history and the world. Vandalarius put me in charge of both, each at their level. Do you have family in Persia? My family is Valamir and Bevian, Ludimir that is. As a young child, Valamir had trouble with the pronunciation of Bevian's proper name. His mother allowed the nickname. He continued his story. At 18, when Valamir became a man, he bought me from his father. He gave me my freedom. It's my choice to stay. Helena considered his words. Slavery was accepted, an institution intrinsic to the fabric of civilized society. Life with Kansvar had personalized her perspective, transforming it into repugnance. She looked at Karatapan's dignified lined face. You found the strength to survive. Yes, in time you'll find it too. It's difficult for you to believe now, but the Lord has smiled on you by entrusting your life to Valamir's safekeeping. She felt a shiver go up and down her spine, as if recognizing the truth in his words. Still, she did not feel uplifted. Instead, her emotions and thoughts churned together in a frightening swirl, spiraling downward to despair. Everything closed in, trapping her. Dark feelings clouded her mind, making her question Karatapan's motives. He served Valamir, not her. Resenting how their common language had allayed her fears. She resisted its comfort. Ignoring his suspicious stare, he began to eat. Between mouthfuls, he spoke. My reputation, I knew your grandfather. Why do you tell me this? He beamed at her. Good. Don't give your trust so quickly. Listen to your inner voice, not words from the outside. His advice, echoing her grandfather's, only made her feel more alone. She was too tired to be strong. While you eat, I'll tell you what I know of your grandfather. I'm not hungry. I heard your stomach growl. You've honored your loss. Now attend to your body. Besides, don't you want to hear about him? She muttered under her breath. You should have been a horse trader. Maybe I was a lifetime ago. Please share a meal with me. I don't like to eat alone. Her mouth turned up in a sad smile, and Karatapan's blue eyes twinkled. Using their fingers, they ate from the leather bowls. Though the meat had the pungent taste of wild antelope, it was cooked to perfection. Our religion has changed over the years, as you know, Karatapan said. But unlike the Medes, you now control the Gathas. The very words of Zarathustra, your grandfather remained true to the old ways, preserving them as best he could. He broke with the ruling priesthood, calling them corrupt, and chose voluntary banishment in Constantinople. Yet the priest never tried to kill Belisachem. Over the years, I heard many stories about his spiritual powers. Perhaps they hoped that one day he would share his knowledge with them. Eating her meal, Helena listened intently. Her grandfather had dismissed the Medes as impostors, not worthy of discussion. But at a deeper level, she was distressed by the juxtaposition of her memories of a kindly grandfather with Karatapan's description of a man renowned for mysterious abilities. She spoke slowly, almost in a whisper. Grandfather often told me that our line was descended from the prophet Zarathustra himself. That would explain the Medes' interest. Karatapan, no one could prove such a claim. The records have been long lost. The Medes must have believed he carried the sacred bloodline. Constantinople was not beyond their reach. But Belisachem grew old, free of an assassin's knife. Perhaps he didn't think that he was important enough to kill. You don't understand, Helena. His very existence was a threat to them. Exhaustion found her. She yawned. Well, his death has ended it. The Medes have nothing to fear from me. Karatapan looked thoughtful. It might be best if the Persians did not know of you. As Beluchistram's direct descendant, they'd have a use for you. Unless my father died in battle, he's in Persia somewhere. Why would they want me, a woman, when they could have the son? That could be true, but now more than anything, you need rest. Rest. I'll leave you to sleep. He paused. I know someone with a bolt of beautiful fabric. I'd like to have a dress for you made from it. Would that please you? Kratapan, what are clothes to me now? He did not try to soothe her with soft words. I'm sorry for your loss, Helena. Do you need anything before you sleep? No, but I thank you for your kindness. He smiled and quietly went outside. Helena curled up in a ball on Valamir's sleeping pad. She could hear the old servant outside, finishing his chores in the afternoon sunlight. As soon as she covered herself with blankets, she was asleep. She awakened to Kratapan's voice shouting, No, Bevian! Quickly she sat up confused. Night was falling. The fire flickered in the hearth, and she did not know where she was. Her face was cold, numb with lingering exhaustion, both physical and emotional. The tent seemed to spin. She leaned forward and rested her head on her knees, breathing deeply to ward away dizziness. Her heart pounded, warning her of danger. She listened to the angry voices outside, but could not hear Valamir's. Thudemir's words were slurred from drink as he shouted at Kratapan. Her mind fully alert, she looked frantically for a weapon, but without success. Desperate, her thoughts were chaotic, ruled by fear. Then, unbidden, her childhood lessons surfaced. As if her grandfather were beside her, she quieted. Panic swept through her body, but she released it to God. Her thinking cleared. She stood and saw her two knives hanging from the tent's intersecting poles, just out of reach. Bevian pushed his way inside. Kratapan followed close behind. Remaining on her feet, Helena turned to face the intruder. With his body, he blocked the tent flap, barring escape. All at once, her hatred of Cansbar and Ivan erupted to include any man who would do her harm. She glared at Bevian with deep contempt. He eyed her provocatively. Barely breathing, Helena locked eyes with him, hoping to keep him at bay. She centered herself by rooting herself to the earth and drew strength from it. Kratapan interrupted. Bevian, please, come with me. No, I must speak to her. Alone. He spoke in Gothic, with a voice so like his brother's. Protectively, Kratapan moved to her side. Valamir speaks to the shaman, negotiating his price for joining his hand with Helena. Helena's. No, Theodore said, his lips a thin line. He switched to Gothic. You must make him see sense. The plan is foolish. The bitch will cost him Attila's friendship. And for what? A woman? Attila loves Valamir, Bevian. You underestimate his loyalty to his old friend. They played as children together before he was sent as hostage to Rome. With slow movements, Theodemir slumped down, reeking of liquor. He put his head in his hands. Kratapan was gentle. What troubles you, Bevian? Why should Valamir have her? He always gets what he wants. Besides being the heir, he's father's favorite. Even Attila respects him. I need this woman. I betted two since I last saw her, and they did nothing for my pain. Her eyes, green like the sea, haunt me. Valamir doesn't have the imagination to preach her. If I had my lyre, I would immortalize her face in song, and then sing another for her body. Theodemir, Kratapan said, pulling him up by the arm. Come outside. I cooked something special for you, hoping that you'd join me. We'll talk more in private. At the mention of food, Theodemir became more cooperative, allowing Kratapan to lead him out. As he moved farther away, their conversation became indistinct. His voice was petulant, no longer aggressive. Helena spared him no sympathy. He had violated her cocoon, shattering her fragile illusion of safety. Her heart pounded quickly. She trembled. She wanted to walk fast and far under the setting sun and think. Clearly that was impossible. It was not safe outside the tent. Trying to calm herself, she slowly tidied her few possessions in the satchel with her one good hand. At the bottom, she found Mikhail's spare clothing. Stroking the rough material, interwoven with strands of wool and flax, she was flooded with memories of him, laughing in his red tunic and brown pants. She almost threw the garments on the fire, wanting the flames to burn away her pain. But the heavy material would only smother the small blaze. With a sigh, she refolded the clothing and brought them to her face, inhaling the scent of him. In time, she let the small bundle fall in her lap. Gradually, she became aware of a soothing presence, diminishing her despondency. Sensing rather than seeing, she felt Mikhail was near. Her despair lifted, but her doubts returned. She wondered once more if imagination brought her close to madness. When Valamir returned, Helena was relieved. She did not stir and remained by the fire, staring into the flames. Ages ago in Cansvar's house, Valamir had reminded her of a falcon, soaring in the air currents, untouched by the concerns of others. Having spent more time in his company, Helena had glimpsed a passion hidden beneath his remote facade. He joined her at the rudimentary hearth. Kretschmann told me about Thudamir. I'm sorry for his rudeness, he said. His face was flushed with anger. I'm glad you're back. His expression softened, but he remained silent. Then he took her hand in his. Your being here has made my tent a home. As her hands found his, the familiar sense of communication returned. The moment was quiet, yet vivid with intensity. When he placed his arm around her, she did not stiffen against him. Pulling her onto his lap, he held her. Her ear against his chest, she listened to his steady heartbeat, comforted by its rhythm. I've spoken to the shaman. He's agreed to a ceremony. Her body tensed involuntarily. The idea of marriage remained macabre, tarnished by nightmare memories of Cansvar. I promise that I won't force you, Helena. She wanted to believe him, but her body remembered the past, and she did not withdraw from his embrace. Bevian thinks I'll cause trouble for you with Attila, Helena said to the ground. Valamir laughed, but with a harsh edge. Did he? Is that how he convinced himself that raping you would be for my own good? He always finds a reason to justify taking what he wants, no matter what the cost to me. Valamir paused. I'll have to beat him, just like when we were young. No, she said to her surprise. Please don't. He was drunk. He didn't touch me. No thanks to his self-restraint. Kretschmann spared me none of the details. But for him, tonight's outcome would have been different. A thorough thrashing will do Bevian good. Helena fixed Valamir with her eyes. Please let it be. He'll hate you because of me. His eyes sparked with anger. He must learn respect. Deep within, she knew if Valamir humiliated Thudamir, he'd be no different than a wounded animal, vicious through hurt pride. I shall not come between you. Your blood bond is sacred, she said, persevering. Valamir shrugged. I've no plans to renounce him, but he will suffer enough to improve his memory. More than once I've told him to keep away from you. You asked me to marry you. I think the Kretschmann has been arranging for a dress. If you beat Thudamir, he won't be your witness to the celebration. Have him stand by you, and he'll leave me alone. As his brother's wife, I'd be forbidden. Valamir was silent, withdrawn. Then he added abruptly, Your reasoning is sound, but I'll miss seeing him on the ground, his hands clenching his stomach with pain. His eyes touched her face softly. Will you marry me, Helena, tonight? Yes. Yet, without the brother's crisis as a distraction, her heart felt heavy again. She could not help wondering about Valamir's motivations. Helena looked at him straight in the eyes and asked, Why do you care so much what happens to me? Valamir took a deep breath and only shook his head. I don't know. All I know is I want to keep you safe. Something in her heart crumpled. Her eyes welled up, and she looked down. He pulled her to his chest, and she found his arms around his waist. Thank you, she whispered. They stayed intertwined for a moment. Then Valamir pulled back enough so he could see her face. Actually, Kretschmann has the dress ready for you. Do you want to see it? Did you take it from a dead woman? No. Didn't he tell you how to pull silk from a caravan? It was a gift of appreciation for their safe passage, he said. It's stolen, you mean? Don't let that ruin his gift. Helena paused. Because you asked for Kretschmann's sake, I'll accept it. Resting his hands on her shoulders, he kissed her softly on the forehead. He pulled away reluctantly, his eyes alive. You made me happy, Helena, he said, embracing her again. As he stood to leave, he stared at her and became very still. For a few seconds, Helena's world became the moment and Valamir. I must see the final preparations, he said. Kretschmann will bring the dress. With white knuckles, he held the tall, supporting pole. As the entrance flap fell behind him, Helena blinked. Her heart drumming, she smiled. Valamir's blue eyes lingered in her mind. And that's chapter 7. So if you want to read ahead, go on Amazon, check it out. The Phoenix and the Falcon. Support my book. I do really think it'd make a great movie. But now with, all the COVID stuff, you have to wait because too many people at once. But check it out. Thanks for following my book on my live streaming event. And I look forward to next week. I will be here at same time, same place, same channel. Take care. Bye.